Opinion: why WTC towers couldn't withstand air crash like Ahmedabad Medical Hostel did after the Air India Flight 171 Boeing Dreamliner 7878 crashed into a medical hostel on June 12. Many wondered how the building could withstand the impact while the twin towers of the World Trade Center couldn't when they were hit by planes flown allegedly by terrorists, which made the towers cave in on September 9, 2001. Is the comparison fair? No. Earlier, in the comment sections of related social media posts by some friends, the question had been addressed simplistically, stating that the World Trade Center WTC towers were designed to collapse at impact so that adjacent buildings could be saved. This was somewhat like the deliberate caving-in design of the much smaller but big by Indian standards Supertech twin towers in Noida that were blown up using explosives on August 28, 2022. It was explained that urban America has seen frequent changes in plans, with one generation of planners often finding flaws in the plans of their predecessors. U.S. cities have a history of being built and razed. Considering such an eventuality, the office buildings were made in a way that made demolitions less risky, keeping people in the surroundings out of harm's way. While this is true, other factors explain why the WTC towers could not withstand the impact of one airplane flying into each, which the hostel building in Ahmedabad could. The following is a deep dive into all the physical factors of physics. Nanan: the aircraft for Air India Flight 171 was a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner, a twin-engine, wide-body jet with a maximum takeoff weight of approximately 2,28,000 kg and a fuel capacity of about 1,26,000 liters. It carried 242 passengers and crew and was fully fueled for a long-haul flight to London. The crash occurred shortly after takeoff, at low altitude around 625 feet and likely below 250 km/h, close to stall speed, which limited its kinetic energy upon impact. In the WTC attacks, the planes were Boeing 767-200 ERS, American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175, slightly smaller than the 787, with maximum takeoff weights around 1,79,000 kg. They were traveling at high speeds, approximately 750 km/h Flight 11 and 950 km/h Flight 175 WITH high kinetic energy. Both planes were also fueled for transcontinental flights, contributing to large fuel explosions. The factor of kinetic energy calls for further research. The Air India 7878 crashed at a low speed, as it struggled to gain altitude post-takeoff. Low speed reduces kinetic energy proportional to the square of velocity considerably, resulting in less destructive force upon impact. The 767s that hit the WTC were traveling at 45 times that speed, delivering exponentially greater kinetic energy. Take a demonstrative example: a plane at 965 km/h has 16 times the kinetic energy of one at 250 km/h, assuming similar mass. This high-energy impact caused extensive structural damage to the WTC towers. The article next explores the construction of the buildings under study in further detail. The hostel at BJ Medical College was a reinforced concrete RCC structure, common in India, with thick concrete walls and iron reinforcement. RCC buildings are robust against localized impacts and fires, as concrete has high compressive strength and better fire resistance than steel. The hostel's smaller size and denser construction helped it withstand the crash without collapsing entirely, though it sustained visible damage, including explosions and fires. The WTC towers were steel-framed skyscrapers with a tube-frame design, relying on a dense grid of steel columns in the exterior walls and a central core. Steel loses strength at high temperatures above 500 C, and the WTC's lightweight fireproofing was dislodged during the impact, exposing steel to intense jet fuel fires estimated at 8,001,000 C. This weakened critical structural components, leading to progressive collapse. The tower's height, 110 stories, and open floor plans also amplified the collapse dynamics. Dealing with the effects of a devastating fire warrants a deeper study. The 7878 struck the hostel at a low angle, with its nose up, suggesting a near stall condition. The impact caused multiple explosions and fires, but the fire's intensity and duration were likely less severe due to the lower kinetic energy and possibly better containment by the concrete structure. The crash killed 241 on board and 1934 on the ground, indicating significant destruction, but the building's core structure remained partially intact. In the WTC attacks, on the other hand, the 767 struck the towers at high angles, penetrating deep into the structures and damaging multiple floors and core columns. The jet fuel ignited massive fires, exacerbated by office contents, furniture, paper, plastic, etc., which burned for over an hour before collapsing. The combination of impact damage and prolonged high-temperature fires caused the steel framework to buckle, initiating a catastrophic chain reaction. Each tower collapse killed about 1,000, with estimates of 2,606 in the towers and on the ground. The next factor is a deeper dive into the physics of things. The Air India plane hit the hostel at a low angle, as already said, likely skidding across the building or ground, distributing the impact force over a larger area. The hostel's lower height, though a multi-story building, not a skyscraper, meant less gravitational potential energy to drive a collapse. The WTC plane struck at high angles, with Flight 11 hitting the North Tower floors 9,399 and Flight 175 hitting the South Tower floors 7,785. These high-altitude impacts severed critical columns and triggered fires across multiple floors, with the weight of the upper floors contributing to the progressive collapse. Having called the comparison unfair, it raises valid questions about structural resilience and aviation safety. The hostel's ability to remain partially intact suggests that RCC structures may handle low-speed impacts better than steel-framed skyscrapers handle high-speed impacts plus prolonged fires. The WTC collapse was a unique event driven by a combination of factors: impact damage, fire, and design vulnerabilities not replicated in Ahmedabad. The human, mechanical and external reasons include the differences, such as the Air India crash prompting scrutiny of the Boeing 787's safety, with past whistleblower allegations about manufacturing flaws, e.g., fuselage joint stress, battery fires, etc. However, no definitive cause has been linked to the crash, with investigations focusing on potential dual-engine failure or other technical issues. This contrasts with the WTC, where the cause was deliberate terrorist action, not mechanical failure. While Ahmedabad's airport has a history of bird strikes, 38 reported in 202,223, catastrophic dual-engine failure from birds is rare at low altitudes. This probable factor in the Air India crash was irrelevant to the WTC. Whereas some social media posts and discussions may imply skepticism about the WTC's collapse, e.g., questioning why a concrete building survived better, the conspiracy theories like the false flag theory that posits that the George Bush administration or the American deep state sabotaged the buildings to get an excuse to go after the Osama bin Laden-led Al-Qaeda often lack engineering context. The WTC's collapse is well documented by reports of the National Institute of Standards and Technology (NIST), which attribute it to impact damage and fire, not explosives or other unproven theories. The Air India crash, by contrast, is under active investigation, with no evidence of foul play. The explanation of the distinct reasons of physics for one caving in and the other refusing to collapse did not explain how the WTC's Tower 7 fell, which a friend asked. Conspiracy theories abound on that, too, even though the U.S. authorities convincingly ruled them out. World Trade Center Building 7 WTC-7 collapsed on September 11, 2001 at 5:20 p.m. local time, approximately 7 hours after the collapse of the Twin Towers WTC-1 and WTC-2. Its collapse has been widely studied and is primarily attributed to fire-induced structural failure, as outlined by the NIST in its final report Ngster 1A 2008, which is presented in brief as follows. Even the concise explanation is quite long for a comment and quite important to be allowed to get lost in posterity. Unlike WTC-1 and WTC-2, WTC-7 was not struck by an aeroplane. However, it was badly damaged by debris from the collapse of WTC-1, the North Tower, located about 113 m away. Falling steel and debris caused large gashes in WTC-7's south face and started multiple fires. Debris from WTC-1 ignited fires on at least 10 floors of WTC-7, most devastatingly on floors 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, and others, fueled by office contents like furniture, plastic, and paper. The fire raged for 7 hours, largely unchecked, as the building's sprinkler system was disabled due to a severed water main from the earlier collapses. Investigation by the NIST found that prolonged fires heated steel beams and floor systems to temperatures exceeding 600 C. This caused thermal expansion of steel beams, particularly on the 13th floor near column 79, in the northeast corner of the building. Thermal expansion pushed a critical girder off its seat at column 79, triggering a local floor collapse. This initiated a progressive failure, as unsupported floors above collapsed, overloading column 79. WTC-7 contained large diesel fuel tanks for emergency generators, raising initial concerns about their role in the fires. The NIST concluded that while diesel fuel may have contributed to fire intensity, it was not the primary cause of collapse. The fires were primarily sustained by office combustibles. Debris damage from WTC-1 included a 10-story gash on the south face, which weakened the structure but did not directly cause the collapse. WTC-7 was a 47-story steel-framed building with a trapezium-like design, completed in 1987. It used a core of steel columns surrounded by perimeter columns, connected by floor trusses. The building housed critical systems like emergency power for New York City's Office of Emergency Management. A key structural feature was the long-span floor systems, particularly around columns 79, 80, and 81, which supported large open office spaces. These long spans made the structure vulnerable to fire-induced failure if key columns were compromised. The long-span floor design and lack of fire suppression were sufficient to cause the collapse, as validated by the NIST's computer models and peer-reviewed studies. The failure of column 79, a critical vertical support, led to a cascading collapse of adjacent columns 80 and 81. This created an internal collapse of the east side of the building. The loss of these columns caused the remaining structure to buckle, resulting in a near free-fall collapse of the entire building. The collapse took approximately 6.5 seconds, with the first 1.75 seconds at freefall acceleration due to the rapid failure of the lower structure. The brief freefall phase 1.75s occurred because the lower exterior columns buckled rapidly after the internal structure collapsed, not because of explosives. WTC-7's collapse thus provides additional context to the comparison between a Boeing Dreamliner hitting the Ahmedabad Medical Hostel building and one smaller plane hitting each of the WTC twin towers. WTC-7's collapse being caused by fire and debris, not a direct plane impact, also makes it a poor comparison to the Hostel, which withstood a low-energy crash due to its robust concrete construction, which was why mentioning this WTC tower would have breached the context of an earlier explanation. On the one hand, similar to the caving in of the WTC twin towers, WTC-7's collapse involved fire weakening the steel. On the other hand, the absence of an aircraft impact meant less initial structural damage. The Hostel's concrete structure was more fire-resistant than WTC-7's steel framework, which lost strength at high temperatures. WTC-7's progressive collapse, initiated by a single column failure, contrasts with the WTC Twin Towers top-down collapse driven by massive impact damage and fires. The Hostel's partial survival likely reflects its smaller size and denser construction, unlike WTC-7's tall, open steel design. WTC-7's collapse has been a focal point for conspiracy theories that claim it was a controlled demolition due to its rapid, symmetrical fall. The NIST and engineering experts refute this. The NIST found no evidence of sounds of blasts, seismic signals, or explosive residues consistent with demolition. Swipe left for next video. The collapse's symmetry was due to the uniform failure of the steel framework after column 79's buckling. The author is a senior journalist and writer. Views expressed in the above piece are personal and solely those of the author. They do not necessarily reflect NEWS18's views. Latest blogs.